What's up, everybody? Thought I would take you through how I track jobs, mileage, and hours. So this is what I've used, pretty much the same method for the last, ever since I've been in business. I've used this same kind of calendar. I buy this same one every year. Gives you plenty of area to write your notes for each day's work. This is the one I've found that works best for me. But use whatever works for you. So basically what I do when I get in the truck in the morning before I leave the house, I write my mileage down because my home is where my business is based from. So even though I work 2 jobs, usually at lunch I'm going to get parts or I'm doing estimates. So my mileage starts when I leave the house in the morning. So I write my mileage down. You can see this day I didn't actually do any work, any remodeling work. This day I did have a job, so I write down my mileage when I left the house. This is just the name of the job. It would be easier if I put my job number, but at the end of the year, which I'll show you in a minute, I go back through every day, and it kind of helps me reconcile and realize what kind of work I did throughout the year. So it'd be easier to put the job number next to them instead of the name, but there's a reason I do that. So started at 5:30, stopped at 8:30. So that's 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. If I'd only had one job that day, so the next morning when I woke up, wrote the mileage down when I got in my truck. This day I had 2 jobs. So one job I went from 5:45 to 6:15. And usually I put a mileage out here. Let's see. I believe that was 41. $305. Okay. So now I know my mileage. This first job gets these hours, and the mileage between here and here I hit against this job number. And then the next job I went to, basically this is the mileage from here to here gets hit against this job. So I've got my hours in and my mileage. I basically do the same thing every day. If there's more than one job, I write the mileage at the end of that job. So this is when I leave the house. When I leave this job here, this James job, and head to my next job, I'll write the mileage. Before I leave this driveway, I'll write the mileage down. And then I'll go to the next one. If I had another job after this, I'd do the same thing. I'd write my mileage before I left their driveway. And then your last job of the day is basically this mileage to when you get up the next morning. All that counts towards that job. So that's the way I track it manually. There's all kinds of apps that will help you do this. I like doing it this way. I've tried some of the apps. This to me kind of helps. It only takes, I work about 8, I've averaged between, right around 800 hours is what I work on my remodeling business every year, and that's been my average for the last 7 years. So it only takes me probably 4 hours to enter all this data. I entered it in usually January of every year, so I prepare for my taxes. I can write this down. Will show exactly what my mileage is at the end of the year for business. So what I do from there is I have this massive spreadsheet. And this has been going since I started business. So I kind of got a tracking of, this helps me track backlog work, denied, so estimates I've did that did turn out, no pays. Trade out basically means they, some of those are subs that I've done work for and they've done favors for me, so didn't charge them anything. So complete. This, you're looking at 2017, so I've documented what my estimate was in here, the day I actually finished it, and finished for me is the day I actually got paid. So if they sent me a check, this is the date on the check. Total charged, and then I have actual material in here. So the way I do this is I keep receipts. Like I said, there's other ways of doing this, but I keep receipts and put them in a little vanilla envelope. At the end of the job, I've got every receipt for any material I bought on that job, and then I know what my total billed is, and this spreadsheet basically does the calculation for me. So it's just simple math. Takes the amount billed, subtracts the materials, and tells me what my profit is. I track my year, so this just helps me track what year those jobs were done. And then depending on how I pay taxes, I try to track it down to the month. In my state, it depends on how much you make. So sometimes you've got to file quarterly. Sometimes you got to pay your tax monthly. I think right now I'm on annually. So at one point in time, I would put down the date that I filed the taxes. Now I basically just put the last day of the month that the job was closed in. Then out to the side is where I track some of my analysis stuff. So I'll show you where I enter my mileage, so I can see the total number of hours I spent on the job, the total number of mileage, the total mileage that accrued on my vehicle during the period of the job. Average price. Some of this stuff I haven't used in a while. So this is an ever-changing number. That's the average price per gallon. So if I enter that in, it'll calculate in, and I'll calculate out, based off this mileage, how much did it cost me? And then that equates to a mileage expense. So some of these numbers are pretty depressing if you get down to this. Profit after gas expense. So as you can see, since I didn't enter anything, that just comes straight across. And then I also pull it out to earnings per hour. So when I get done at the end of the year, I can come in here and look at my earnings per hour. So as you can see on some of these, I didn't do that great. Other ones I did awesome. So it just kind of depends. But as you notice, I don't have anything entered for my gas expense, this doesn't include overhead for subs. It doesn't include overhead for really anything other than materials. This takes into account the expense of the materials. It will take into account the price of gas if I put figures in here. So this, like I said, this doesn't take into account everything, but this does give you a pretty good running total. So right now I can go into any year that I've been in business and pull up every job since 2009. I can pull up every job that I completed in that calendar year and tell you exactly how much I profited, exactly how much I had in materials, how many miles I accrued that year. My mileage database is kept here. So I've had different vehicles over the years. Basically what I do, and I'll show you on this tab, I give every job I do a job number. I started out with job 100. I think I'm at 1200 and something now. Those aren't actually completed jobs. Some of these are estimates. So you'll see gaps in here. Those are likely jobs I didn't get. But everything you're seeing in yellow, these are completed jobs in the year 2017. Let's see. So I write down the date, the job number, basically the vehicle I used, my starting mileage, starting time, ending mileage when I left that job. So if this was the only job for this day, this would be the mileage when I got in my truck that morning, the time I got to the job, when I left the driveway at that job, and the time I left the driveway. So I spent 45 minutes here and 14 miles. So as you can see, 2018, there's 854 and a half hours and 23,671 miles were strictly for business. So, as you can see, basically what this forces me to do is to go back and look at these and put a job number right next to each one of these. So like I said, that's kind of an inefficiency in the way I do it, but it doesn't take me that long to do this analysis at the end of the year, and then it gives me a running total for how many hours and how many miles I've spent just on the business. So this is what I use. It's a template, like I said, that I've used for years. You'll have to play with Word a little, or Excel, in order to get your format and everything right. But it's a pretty slick little way of keeping up with things. And like I said, if I ever got audited, I could pull this file up and tell them exactly, my mileage, stop and start. It's a whole lot easier to keep up with it this way than trying to back into a number. Because at the end of the year, I have to provide my accountant how many personal miles I did, which basically all I do is I write down in my calendar what my mileage was on January 1st or December 31st. Let me see if it's in here. Yeah, so I've got my mileage on the 1st. Then on January 31st of this calendar year, I'll write down my mileage there, and that will give me my total miles. And all I do is just subtract whatever this is to get my business. So usually equates out to about 60 to 75% of my mileage is business related. So hope that helps. Like I said, this is just the method I use. There's tons of apps you can use to keep up with this stuff. But this is the method that's worked for me for, like I said, 10 plus years. Hope you liked the video. Make sure you share and hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.